On November 23, 2002, the Madonna nightclub in Offenbach was well attended. The club is located right in the city center on Bahnhofstrasse. It is not even midnight yet, but there are already a good 150 guests at the Madonna. There is partying, dancing, and laughing until several loud bangs suddenly come from outside. Shortly afterwards, a man runs into the club, panicked and begging for help. The owner of the club was shot in the parking lot while his guests were celebrating in his disco. And to this day, his murderer is still being sought. Miljan Grujičić lives in Offenbach, the fifth largest city in Hessen, Germany. Miljan came to Germany from Montenegro in 1992 because of the war in Yugoslavia. In 2002, at the age of 33, he has built up a life for himself. He has been married for 8 years, but is rarely at home. Miljan works a lot because together with business partners, he runs a nightclub in Offenbach called Madonna, located at 14 to 16 Bahnhofstrasse. At the time, the club was well known and popular nationwide, especially among visitors from the Balkan region. There is also live music there from time to time, mainly by artists from the former Yugoslavia, organized by Miljan. Miljan sees himself as a successful businessman. He is said to be self-confident and sometimes even a little arrogant. At the Madonna, Miljan not only looks after the well-being of the partygoers. Some illegal side business is also conducted there. Drug dealing and money laundering are part of everyday life. Miljan later goes into the drug business on his own, much to the dismay of some of his relatives. Many are worried about Miljan and his risky business dealings. But the 33-year-old dismisses their concerns, saying that he has everything under control. In the fall of 2002, however, the tables turn. Miljan gets hold of several weapons. He even wears a bulletproof vest on some occasions. It is not known why. He may have had a dark premonition or was even actively threatened. As already mentioned, Miljan also does business with rather shady characters. He always takes a small black notebook with him to each of these business meetings, in which he makes important notes. He always carries this book with him and uses it to collect names, agreements, and deals. On November 23rd, 2002, Miljan is out and about in Frankfurt with business partners and friends. The group visits several bars. Miljan's wife is on her way back from Bosnia, where she visited her family. Due to his job commitments, her husband did not accompany her. The two of them are talking on the phone that day. During the conversation, Miljan tells her about an argument. However, he does not say with whom he argued and when the argument took place. It is not uncommon for Miljan to have disagreements and run-ins with associates. Later, Miljan also sets off back to Offenbach. Together with his friend Radko, Miljan first drives to the Madonna in his Ferrari. They only stay there for a short time on this Saturday evening. At his nightclub, Miljan swaps the Ferrari for his second car, a silver Mercedes-Benz CL 500. Miljan sets off from there around 10 p.m. on his way home. At Madonna, he says that he still wants to watch the boxing match between Vitaly Klitschko and Larry Donald on TV that evening. Whether he really goes home to watch the boxing match or whether he meets up with someone else is still unclear today, because Miljan's wife is still on her way home at this point and therefore not at home. She cannot testify that Miljan really did drive to their shared apartment after 10 p.m. The only thing that is clear is that he left Madonna's at around 10 p.m. in his Mercedes. But at 11:30 p.m., Miljan drives back to Madonna's. Where and how he spent the last hour and a half, we still don't know. When he arrives back at the nightclub in his Mercedes, he is seen by a witness. The witness is a neighbor. The name of the witness was never disclosed. For the sake of simplicity, we'll just call him Max, because Max observed something very important. At the time, the club shared the backyard with a bowling alley, a Greek restaurant, a parking garage, and the entrances of several apartment buildings. Max lived in one of these buildings. He was standing at his window when he saw Miljan turn into the parking lot at the back of the Madonna and park his car. Then Max turns away from the window and hears a shot shortly afterwards. 3 more follow. When Max looks out of the window again, he sees Miljan Grujičić lying lifelessly in the parking lot of his nightclub. Max immediately dials 911 and runs outside. Miljan is lying on the asphalt, covered in blood. Max then runs into the Madonna to get help. But there is nothing that can be done for Miljan Grujičić. The 33-year-old is dead, shot in front of his own nightclub. Investigators are narrowing down the type of weapon that may have killed Miljan. They assume it was a weapon from Crvena Zastava, a Yugoslavian manufacturer, either a caliber 67 or 70. However, the murder weapon was never found. And not only the murder weapon is missing to this day, but also Miljan's little black notebook, in which he made important notes about his business and partners. It stands to reason, then, that Miljan's attacker took this notebook with him. Maybe because his name or the name of a client was in it. Since Miljan was involved in illegal activities, it is likely that some of the information in the notebook was highly explosive and incriminating for certain people. The police suspect that the perpetrator comes from abroad, and that the murder of Miljan Grujičić was planned well in advance. It is likely that they are not only looking for a murderer, but also for someone who ordered Miljan's death. On the one hand, it could be that Miljan's disputes with shady business partners led to his murder. But the police are also looking into the possibility that the murder of Miljan was ordered from his old home country of Montenegro. This is because Miljan was involved in a gang shootout in 1990. 2 men were killed on Miljan's group's side that day. The shooter was arrested and convicted. However, by the time Miljan was shot in Offenbach, the man had been released. Therefore, the police do not rule out the possibility that this old conflict could have something to do with the murder. The police are also considering the possibility that both scenarios could be true. That is, the people with whom Miljan had drug deals may have joined forces with old enemies from his home country to eliminate the 33-year-old. In the book Ermitteln Verboten, Investigating Forbidden by Jürgen Roth, published in 2004, there are further details about the case of Miljan Grujičić. The book deals with organized crime in Germany. It should be noted that Jürgen Roth is recognized as an expert on Eastern Europe, but as a publicist, he is not without controversy. Some of the information that Roth presents in the book about the murder of Miljan is definitely not correct. For example, the day of the murder. Roth refers to November 24, 2002, but Miljan was murdered on November 23rd. Furthermore, he spells Miljan's name differently than all other sources. Nevertheless, Roth's book contains some information that is not available anywhere else. We don't want to withhold this information from you. However, we can't say for sure how accurate and true it is. The police described the shootouts in which Miljan was involved in Montenegro as a conflict between 2 rival groups. In his book, Roth not only presents the whole thing differently, but also in much more detail. He writes that the whole thing has the following background. Miljan, together with 3 other men, committed a robbery in Montenegro at the end of the 80s. They had agreed to divide the loot fairly among themselves. However, one of the 4 participants, a boy of only 15 years at the time, had got nothing. The 15-year-old had then obtained a pistol and shot 2 of the other 3 men. Only Miljan Grujičić got away. Roth writes that the perpetrator was released from prison in 2002. The perpetrator tracked down Miljan in Germany. Miljan offered him money or cars so that he would leave him alone. However, the double murderer was concerned with honor and had announced to acquaintances that Miljan would not survive the year. And that is exactly how it turned out. As I said, the only source that says this is Jürgen Roth's book. Although the book itself has a source register, unfortunately no evidence is given for this specific information. What is certain is that the investigations immediately after Miljan's murder were unfortunately unsuccessful. There was initially a suspect, but the suspicion turned out to be unfounded. Unfortunately, there is no further information on this. In 2003, the proceedings were suspended for the time being. It looks like the case of Miljan Grujičić will become a cold case. In an online forum, a user writes about the Madonna nightclub. You can decide for yourself whether you want to go there after the boss was executed in front of the door with a bullet to the head. During the subsequent raid, 17 people were found with a live weapon. Whether the latter information is correct cannot be said. There are no sources online. But even after Miljan's murder, things are not always rosy in the nightclub. In 2004, the area around the Madonna had to be cleared on a large scale, 2 years after Miljan's murder. A professionally built bomb was found near the club. Unfortunately, it is not possible to determine who was responsible for this, or whether the Madonna was the target of the bomb. At some point in the 2000s, the Madonna closed. In 2014, the Miljan case was briefly in the news again. Once again, there was a violent altercation on Bahnhofstrasse, where the Madonna was located. 12 men injured guests and staff of a discotheque in Offenbach while it was open for business. The whole thing happened on September 14, 2014 at the Scala Club. It is located at Bahnhofstrasse 16, exactly where the Madonna used to be. However, the police only learned of the violent incident much later. A guest who was present reported the incident to the police in an anonymous letter. The informant wrote that members of the Hells Angels gang of Turkish origin were involved. He also encloses some photos of the people allegedly involved. Unfortunately, the police were never able to determine which of the guests present were victims and which were perpetrators, because all of those present refused to give testimony and did not cooperate with the police. It is said that the Scala Club, which is now on the site of the former Madonna, is now particularly popular with guests of Turkish origin, while in the 2000s, guests from the former Yugoslavia were mainly there. Articles about the events of 2014 also refer to the case of Miljan Grujičić. It is mentioned that the Madonna was at the time associated with, and we quote, the Serbian Mafia. Since the Scala Club is run by different people from the Madonna, it seems unlikely that the 2014 incident is related to Miljan's murder. 8 years later, in 2022, the murder case is reopened. The police had previously received new information regarding possible clients and shooters. The clues are so specific that the police not only initiate new investigations, but also search for the platform of the television program for unsolved cases. The case will be presented there in February 2024. In the course of the program, the investigators are also looking for several witnesses. Between the time the alarm was raised and the police arrived, a dark, older station wagon is said to have driven from the Madonna's backyard, i.e. from the scene of the crime. 2 adults are said to have been sitting in the front seat, with at least 1 child in the back seat. The police are looking for this family as witnesses. They could have been guests at the bowling alley or restaurant next door, for example, or perhaps visiting friends or family in one of the apartment buildings. It would be important for the investigators to find out if these 3 people saw anything or anyone in the backyard on the evening of November 23, 2002. The first promising tipsters come forward while the TV program is still being broadcast. A total of 20 tips are received as a result of the program. 1 lead leads to the red light district. According to the police, this fits Miljan's background perfectly, so the lead seems credible. A media report from September 2024 states that the leads from the program are still being evaluated. The public prosecutor's office has offered a reward of €10,000 for information leading to the arrest of the perpetrator. So far, there have been no arrests or charges, but it looks as if the police are on the trail of the perpetrator or perpetrators. The fact that the police are still evaluating the tips from the TV show is encouraging. After all, the tips that were received after the show must be so valuable that extensive investigations are worthwhile. Because regardless of what kind of business Miljan Grujičić was involved in, he too was someone's son, someone's friend, and later a husband. There are still people who want nothing more than for this murder to be solved. And maybe that will happen soon. What do you think of this case? Do you think it was about the boy's honor or is the Mafia involved? Feel free to write it in the comments. By the way, you also support the channel, because any interaction increases the likelihood that the video will be suggested to people who have not yet subscribed to Insolito. Thank you in advance. Otherwise, there is not much more to say. I wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, or whenever you watch the video, and hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, ciao guys.